Hi, everyone. I'm with Philippe Deslandes. My name is Jean-François Godet from the Lean Institute in Canada. I'm really enthusiastic to be here on stage with Philippe from the Jacques Cartier and Champlain Bridges Incorporated. You will know more on this organization in a few minutes with Philippe. I've known Philippe for over 10 years now. We've collaborated in many organizations in different roles. And I can say that Philippe is really a true Lean ambassador, a true Lean practitioner. So thank you, Philippe, for being here today and taking your time to share some of your experience with us. So before I let you go with Philippe, I just want to mention that please don't forget to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And so if you have any questions, then we'll answer the questions after the presentation. So Philippe, the stage is all yours, and I'll let you go with your presentation.
Thank you, Jean-François. I'm going to share my presentation. Let me know if everything is okay.
We see in the presentation mode, so maybe.
Sorry for that. Share screen 2. I think it should work now.
That's perfect. I'll go backstage. Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jean-François, for the invitation to be here. Jean-François, there's something I've never told you. Do you remember when I became your poor little apprentice 13 years ago, not 10? When I came home from work, my wife would say I looked exhausted. She would then ask, did Jean-François ask you a lot of questions? Since we met and with your support, I'm doing the same thing now, but better. And it's a real pleasure to be here to talk to you about our efforts to connect the dots, to make improvement continuous and meaningful. We are a team of 187 employees with an annual budget of approximately $300 million. Every day, we ensure the safe passage of thousands of users through the management, maintenance, and repair of the infrastructure entrusted to us by the Canadian government. Furthermore, we ensure that all infrastructure remains safe, fully functional, and attractive today and tomorrow. We maintain and we repair, but we also manage other major projects. Here are 2 examples of other major projects that were successfully completed. There's the illumination of the Jacques Cartier Bridge in 2017. It required the installation of 10.4 kilometers of cabling and 2,807 light fixtures using a combination of spotlights and strip lights. There's also the construction of the original Champlain Bridge when it reached the end of its useful life a few years ago. Its deconstruction was completed on time and on budget in 41 months following a sustainable development approach. The impressive removal of 4 of the spans and 3 piers over a highway was done in blitz mode with 21 specialized mechanical excavators. I would like to begin with a summary of my impressions and the discoveries I've made just a few weeks after my arrival. You know that moment when you say to yourself, that's it, honeymoon is over. There was quite a gap between our CEO's vision and how things happen daily. She often used the expression fewer actions, more impact, or one and done, to describe how things should be done. In practice, continuous improvement amounted to large-scale mapping efforts that produced few concrete results. Managers were working at the same time with their team on the strategic plan, their department yearly action, and on other smaller improvements. Almost everyone said they were too busy. Priorities were difficult to define because everything seemed important. The result did not match the efforts. Often, revision and corrections were necessary to move documents through the processes and meet deadlines. I also had a personal challenge to overcome, which was to work in a very different environment. In the past, I had introduced continuous improvement practices in several different manufacturing sectors and in the healthcare system. It was the first time I had worked for an organization whose product was 100% information. There I was on the fifth floor of an office tower, and all I could see were the beautiful frames with photos of our infrastructures. Has this ever happened to you? I'm not talking about not knowing what to do or where to start. I'm talking about that little voice inside your head that says, "Phew, we've got a long way to go." I just gave you a brief informal summary of where I was after a few weeks. Before we talk about solutions, let's agree on the problems. This is the Lean Transformation Framework. I use it as a guide to explore problems through the fundamental questions of purpose, process, and people. I choose to use it to summarize the diagnosis I finalized 12 months later. The problem to solve was our approach to planning and executing, the way we engage people and teams, the way we were choosing the things to improve, and how we maintained the gains afterwards. We needed more capability to work as teams across departments and problem-solving skills. The actual processes and tools were not helping. We lacked clarity, alignment, and focus, and a shared and effective way of doing the work. The action plan models were different. The indicator tracked showed the percentage of progress of the action, and little use was made of quality measure, turnaround times, or internal customer satisfaction. The management system was also a challenge. We needed a structure and effective way to support required leadership behavior. We needed to shift from implementation to experimentation, and in conclusion, it was a perfect opportunity for hoshin kanri. Here's the results and what it looks as of last week. We created an Obeya to support the deployment of our new strategic plan. For those who may not know the word, an Obeya is a Japanese term for big room. It refers to a collaborative workspace used for project management and decision making. The picture were taken last Thursday, a few minutes before our monthly review. On the left is the first level of our strategic plan. Each of the three columns corresponds to one of our long-term objectives. Under each long-term objective are key performance indicator, KPIs, each with a target for the next 5 years. On the right is the second level of the strategic plan. Each of the 4 columns correspond to a different strategy. Below the strategies are the year 1 action plans. Finally, at the bottom right, we can see a simple tool designed to make obstacles visible and to support high-level problem solving. For now, I just wanted to give you a glimpse. I swear it's much more than just for show. We'll come back to that at the end. I drew a small calendar in fiscal year format to trace the sequence of events. Years run from April 1st to March 21st of the following year. My first day at work was in September 2022. Developing continuous improvement within the organization wasn't the main priority. I was primarily hired to organize and support management of all improvement projects. We are in the execution phase of year 1 of our 5-year plan. I've been working on this for 39 months. Continuous improvement is at the heart of our strategic plan and deployment process. We are learning to experiment our way forward with hoshin kanri, and I'm responsible for implementing and supporting these new practices and tools. The red dot you see corresponds to the launch of our new strategic plan, Together Towards 2030, on March 24th, 2025. The planning phase took place during a planned one-year transition period between the old and the new plan. And before that, there was a phase of diagnosis and influence. This led to a tipping point where sparks turned into flames. I'm going to summarize some of key events so far. I'll talk about activities, challenges, and successes, as well as the lessons I've learned along the way. From the very first week, I started helping teams to get organized, solve their own problems, and accumulate small successes to gain visibility. I remained focused on the priorities, but I had to adjust to make a diagnosis. To better understand the organization, I suggested creating a value stream map. It was a tool nobody was familiar with. The most frequent comments during the workshops were, I didn't know you had to do that, or I didn't know it was done like that. In the end, we all had a much better understanding of what was happening, good or bad. One of the main problems was the excessive number of improvement projects being carried out simultaneously at the same time. Sorry. There were 236 in total, and this sometimes interfered with operations. A lot of problems were recurring, and maintaining improvement was difficult. The last piece of the puzzle came with a survey based on the strategy deployment process. The questions were inspired by the process described in Pascal Dennis's book, Getting the Right Things Done. The result clearly showed our current management practices did not align with those of hoshin kanri and did not foster learning and continuous improvement. It's a bit geeky, but I think it's important. I've been practicing the improvement and coaching kata since 2010. I've been practicing strategy. I've been using strategy deployment I started practicing strategy deployment using the H3 process 2 years later. These two processes are different, but the goal is the same: to teach scientific method and support a way of thinking based on experimentation. For someone starting out, I find that the improvement and coaching kata to be a much more structured approach. The coaching questions provide a framework, and the desired habits are put into practice right from the start. It's not the same with the H3. Coaching is key, and it often needs to come from an external expert, as Jean-François in my case. As I've seen on several occasions, without an experienced coach, the process often turns into a box-filling exercise. That explains why I introduced kata first. I introduced the kata to my small team in 2022 using a puzzle-based workshop. The little guy on the right is Jacques. The medium-sized guy on the left is Sébastien. Don't mix them up. Sébastien is our senior continuous improvement expert, and he's the one I first taught kata to. With Sébastien, we gradually developed a small group of learners and future coaches. We started by targeting interested people outside our department. At a certain point, we needed to organize the parallel work of several people. I introduced the H3s into the mix. From top to bottom, you can see a strategic H3, a detailed H3, and then the 4 tools for practicing the kata. That period was fantastic. Those we were coaching were progressing towards their respective challenges. Our strategy was working. Their projects began to gain visibility and attract attention. The workshop with the management committee was a success, and the idea of offering the same experience to all employees was adopted. Little did I know I was approaching the tipping point. With some help, I facilitated an introductory workshop on the improvement kata with nearly 150 participants. It was the following day. Our CEO requested that the next planning exercise be based on the scientific method. We wanted to move from implementation to experimentation. The chosen method was strategy deployment, or hoshin kanri. I knew that this kind of challenge was much more human than technical. To succeed, I knew I had to engage both people's hearts and minds in the process. As a team, our challenge was to make sure the introduction of the required practices were as simple as possible. I often remind myself what Jean-François used to tell me, less is more, Philippe. Our motto was clarity, alignment, and focus, and support for the required leadership behavior. Here are the 5 elements we needed to introduce to experiment on a global scale. Clearer objectives and more precise targets to be achieved. Strategic entries developed with those responsible for their implementation. Results indicator to also measure the impact of effort. Formalize and visible plans used to experiment, learn, and adapt. And finally, a continuous monitoring to ensure focus and alignment. What worried me wasn't so much the basic mechanics of how components would fit together to form a system. It certainly wasn't the first time I had to introduce strategy deployment. Besides, almost half the manager had already used the A3 template internally. We had reached the point of discussing the next plan and priorities. The previous part of the process involved various consultation activities with board members, managers, and employees, as well as key external stakeholders. I had insisted that all managers participate in reviewing the analysis of the consultation result. My initiative was very well received. I also insisted on using the strategic tree concept. This may not be familiar to everyone. The first level of the tree encourages clarity and just a few long-term objectives. They say it has to touch the heart. It also encourages precision and, again, just a few targets that must be achieved. They say it has to engage the mind. The second level and the third level of the tree consist of 8 trees. One at the strategic level and the other one is more detailed. The first level was completed on December 10th. Here on left, you can see our strategic plan. We had worked incredibly hard during at least 4, maybe even 5 intensive workshops with the management committee. We were behind schedule, but the management committee seemed genuinely proud of the work accomplished. As a facilitator, I worked really hard too. The outcome of the exercise needed to be meaningful to the management team now, to the deployment leaders during the development of the plans, and to all employees during the unveiling. I realized that integrating new concepts doesn't require the same effort from everyone. Words, definitions, and clarity of messages are all important elements. At the moment, I realize above all the importance of respecting roles within the organization. At the moment, my role was to present the concept of the strategic tree and clarify the intention of the different components. My role was to guide, not to do the exercise for them. I believe this learning experience is just as valuable for the facilitators as it is for the members of the management team. Everyone has a role to play. Our goal was to have the A3s approved before the end of the current financial year. Between the end of December 2024 and the end of February 2025, a lot happened. The strategic plan was presented to managers. deployment leaders were assigned to various A3s through a recommendation process. An initial practical introduction to the A3s was provided, including several individual and group coaching sessions. By formally introducing the A3 template to deployment leader, the aim was to standardize the working method, but above all, it was to engage individuals and foster teamwork. I admit that the coaches were good, but I want to emphasize the openness that deployment leader demonstrated in learning how to use the new tool. To ensure alignment, the coaches and I insisted that the vertical guiding thread be clearly demonstrated between objective, 5-year targets, year one indicator, and then challenge and action. Finally, each deployment manager were well prepared, and they shared their A3 with the management committee during a catchball exercise. There's a huge difference between having objectives and methods imposed on you and what actually happened. I think catchball was one of the most popular new additions. The deployment leader felt involved. Here are some comments of the management committee at the end of the catchball. One senior director said, "I'm pleased. This exercise brings us back to a strategic level." Another senior director said, "We've never had such comprehensive overview after having presented all the A3s." Another one said, "The quality of the discussion was remarkable. People took the time to reflect." And another example is one senior director that said, "The presenters were excellent, which demonstrate their commitment." Now I'm going to talk a bit about leader standard work because we presented the tool, but you need behavior to support it. So formal monitoring of the previous strategic plan was conducted quarterly, and there were many tools and methods for monitoring action plans. Technically speaking, we can say that there was sometimes a disconnection, both vertically and horizontally. Sorry. The key, in my opinion, is to introduce the fewest possible change from a human perspective to encourage the necessary behavior. We started with the existing organizational structure and meetings. We wanted to incorporate the principles of shorter but more frequent synchronization. And it's better and more effective to prevent deviation than to manage the consequences. We made sure we covered all the link in the chain without introducing redundancies or duplication. So here's what has been thought out, implemented, and is working well. So first, our strategic plan governance distinguishes and synchronizes two categories of activities: deployment activities in light red and support activities in gray. The complete cycle I will show takes place over 4 weeks. Firstly, the deployment leaders, and you'll see it escalates. Firstly, the A3 deployment leaders meet with their team to monitor the action plan. We aim for regular follow-ups at least once every 2 weeks. Secondly, the sponsors of each strategy meet with their A3 deployment leaders to monitor their action plans. Here too, we aim for brief follow-ups at least once a month. Thirdly, the support team leaders meet their team. Currently, continuous improvement and change management manager meet with their team every week. Next, the strategic deployment sponsor meets with the support team leaders. This meeting is scheduled for every third week of the month. The fourth week of the month, the management committee meets to discuss more strategic matters. The management committee is composed of our CEO and the senior directors, who are our sponsors for A3s, and there's also one who is sponsor for the strategic deployment. We are taking advantage of this existing meeting to present an overview of the progress of action and highlight in preparation of the monthly review. The monthly review concludes the cycle by bringing all the people I just mentioned. So, as you can see, our Obeya is really just the tip of the iceberg. To date, there have been 6 monthly reviews in the room. Bringing everyone together always seems to be very much appreciated. The level of discussion is already quite different from the beginning. We're less focused on action. It seems easier to talk about problems we encounter. During animation, I continue to ensure alignment. I ask questions to check if the vertical guiding trend can be clearly demonstrated. What are we trying to achieve? Where are we now? Are we encountering any obstacles? What results and lessons learned should be shared? So we completed our first mid-year review a few weeks ago. Our next challenge is to review the scope of our 9 A3s. Like most organizations, we tried to do too much. Now that we've learned, we must adjust. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe. We've got a few questions here. Maybe the first one, I will read it to you. It says, as you advance your lean deployment, especially through hoshin kanri, how do you ensure it's not just a strategic planning exercise, but a living system that generally connects people to purpose, foster cross-level ownership, and sustain engagement over time?
Wow, that's the fundamental question. How do we keep it alive?
Yes.
Well, one of the key success factor we have right now is that our CEO and senior directors want to integrate experimentation. So it's always in the back of our mind. Are we experimenting or we are just driving actions? There's reflection on roles, responsibilities. One of the next step is to do a second cycle on what should a process owner do. In line of the use of performance indicator to understand what is going, to identify the problem clearly and then take action while monitoring the impact of the efforts. So we're this is something we always have in the back of our mind, how to keep it alive and not going back to old ways of just implementing actions without data to back us up.
Good, thank you. We're almost out of time, maybe a short one. From your experience, what was the last actions that helped the tipping point to become a reality?
The last one or the first one?
The last actions that helped the tipping point.
Well, the last action to help to continue was the willingness to do a mid-year review, take a time out, reflect on results and learning, and the willingness to make adjustment to the plan and not just to continue with the same plan as we started with.
Okay. So what are your next steps?
Take a break from all the work of this presentation and start to work on an Obeya to manage daily operations to bring processes alive. This will start next week.
All right. Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you, Jean-François. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.